I married a film critic. So I married a film critic. So I married a...
Welcome to So I Married a Film Critic, a discussion between a professional film critic and lecturer and me, his wife of 20 years, who just likes to watch movies for fun. I'm your co-host, Julia.
Hey everyone, this is Barry.
And we decided to do a movie that is coming out very soon that you may have not seen or heard of yet. So, babe, what did we watch?
So this is the new film from Hong Kong's master of cinema and really one of the greatest action filmmakers who ever lived, John Woo, total legend. His first American film since Paycheck in 2003. Man, works with Ben Affleck and doesn't make a movie for 20 years. Oh, no, that's not true. What he did was he went back to his homeland and he made Red Cliff, of course, which was a big deal. I haven't seen it yet. I'm terrible. But I've seen everything he did up until that point. I swear I have. In fact, the last movie John Woo made was about 5 years ago. He did this little film called Manhunt, and it's not good. I don't know if he didn't have funding. I'm not sure what happened there, but Manhunt was just one of these unfortunate things. It's a very similar situation to Brian De Palma's recent film. Brian De Palma did a movie called Domino, and it was just like, man, like he clearly wasn't working at the top of his game. The production wasn't there. I don't know if he had the crew he wanted. So I love that Woo is back with a big film. It is a signature action film. It's like, and a little bit of background on John Woo. I mean, obviously, the films that he made in the 80s, The Killer and Hard Boiled came out in 93. That is my favorite action movie of all time. It is. People ask me, like, what's the best? Hard Boiled. That's it. You'll never see a better action movie in your life. It's incredible. And then he came to America with, it started off with Hard Target, then led to Broken Arrow, then, of course, Face Off.
Ooh, I love Face Off.
Face Off is awesome. Now, he's fantastic. A true poet. He's known, of course, for his use of doves, which everybody makes fun of. But no, his films are clearly defined by good and evil. His characters are definitively good, but they have a moral crises. The villains are truly, truly evil. So it is like this sense of like God and the devil battling out. His films do have a spiritual dimension. There is poetry in his use of slow motion. He loves to create a sense of geography, but also this idea of main characters who are transforming from the inside out. That's a signature of all of his films. And he just does it better than anyone else. And if you look at his entire body of work, I mean, he made a musical, he made horror films. Like he did a wide variety of films prior to his signature action movies. And of course, he makes movies, in his homeland and also in the US. And now everybody makes a movie like John Woo. I mean, like his style got stolen pretty quickly, I mean, it's seriously, even like there's moments in Terminator 2, it's like, oh yeah, James Cameron has seen a John Woo film.
Do you think that's why he did this movie? He's like, I'm not going to have any dialogue. See if you're going to copy that.
I think he probably was like flipping through the TV one night and he like watched a Taken sequel and a John Wick sequel and he's like, yeah, I can do this. That's what I suspect. He's like, no. You guys are like, I know how to do this. I invented these movies. So, yeah, That's what I think. This is a silent film, minus all the gunfire and explosions and breaking bones. But beyond that, there's no dialogue in this film. Almost. Okay, what's a number? This movie is 92% no dialogue. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. And you know what? My take on it is it's a little gimmicky, and we'll talk about it. But I enjoyed it while I watched it, but I think after the fact, I just have a lot of questions.
Okay, yeah, we'll definitely talk about that, but the use of no dialogue. Would you say that A Quiet Place is better at doing this?
Oh, yeah, because in A Quiet Place, there's talking and there's communication, and you know what is going on. I mean, in this movie, there's a lot of like, wait, what's happening? Because
before we get into the plot, I got to say, I had a similar experience watching this as I did with A Quiet Place, which is that I found myself intently shutting up. Like I was like, I didn't want to make a sound. I was really into the idea that we need to really lean in because we're not watching this the way you would watch a normal film. I felt the same way watching A Quiet Place. Not so much its sequel, but with this film too, I really got into this idea of like actions are speaking so much louder than things that we're not hearing here.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, but you remember that scene in A Quiet Place when John Krasinski takes his son to the waterfall and they actually can have a conversation?
Yeah.
Okay. Like, the only reason they're not talking in A Quiet Place is out of necessity. This is not, there's no necessity. I mean, he has an injury, which we'll get into, but everybody else around him, they can talk if they want.
Yeah.
So that's why I feel like it's a little bit of a gimmick.
Okay. Well, I mean, obviously you didn't like I would say it's a plot device. You're calling it a gimmick.
Oh, well, I'm not as, sophisticated as you.
No. It's not about sophistication. I think the distinction is that you are not happy with this,
right?
With this, whereas like I enjoyed it, but I have to agree with you. It is not perfect. There are problems with making a whole film.
There
around
are
this.
so many scenes where
they're committed to this.
Yeah,
it's top to bottom.
Yes, there are so many scenes where some dialogue would have been great.
Sure.
Yeah, and you just get nothing.
Yeah, other than
yeah. There you go. That's the movie, you guys.
I have the script right here. I was reading from the script. So.
Okay, well, our opening scene is
a balloon comes at the camera.
Oh,
yeah!
Wow, you're going to the very first shot.
Well, it's cool. It's an overhead shot of suburbia, and suddenly this CGI balloon smacks into the camera and goes, Silent Night.
Oh, yeah. And we have our lead character, Brian, running in slow motion, on the street in a reindeer sweater.
Yes.
Wearing a jingle bell.
Mm.
And you're like, okay, obviously it must be Christmas because...
Or he just, like I do sometimes. Sometimes I'm in a rush. I pick something embarrassing to wear and I'm like, I get to work and I realize, oh, I'm wearing like my Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure t-shirt. I really should have picked something better for work.
But you don't accidentally wear your jingle bell.
You got me there. Not recently. I sometimes wear a whistle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's also for safety.
That's true.
Okay, so Brian's running and we don't really know why he's running, but he's listening to this, like the shots being fired, and he sees these two cars. And
you think he's like an undercover cop coming from a Christmas party?
Yeah, that's kind of the thing you think, but like they do a close up of his hands and they're all bloody.
Yeah.
So you're like, something happened. Why is he running? And where is he going to catch up to these guys? So he does end up getting close enough to like take an iron rod and like smashing one of their windshields.
Yeah.
And then he starts getting shot at. And eventually this gang member with this like crazy face tattoo shoots him right in the neck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The face tattoo. I mean, it looks like metal shards have imprinted themselves on his face.
Yeah. Or it looks like he's going to be taken over by like the Borg or something.
Yeah. If I get that facial tattoo I've been dreaming of, it's going to be this one.
No.
I'm just going to go in there and be like, I want the Silent Night. The Silent Night. And I'm going to sit in that tattoo chair for...
One Silent Night coming up.
That'll be $800 for 12 hours of work.
All right. So Brian ends up in the hospital and... Yeah, he's in the hospital for a very long time. We see his wife, and she doesn't say anything.
No one does.
Yeah.
No one does.
And the part that is actually very heartbreaking, and not that he gets shot that's all awful, but he, his neck has a bandage on it, and he looks in the mirror, and he literally like can't talk. So he's like trying to scream, trying to talk, and nothing's coming out, and he's just looking in the mirror just like, oh my gosh. And
it establishes, okay, like he can't speak, so if you didn't think this movie had much dialogue before, you're not going to hear this character speak for the rest of the film. The wife is played by Catalina Sandino Moreno, who of course was in Maria Full of Grace, which came out 20 years ago now. That's the one about drug mules, and she was very good in that.
Yeah, and she's very good in this. Yeah. Playing a devoted just wife who's just very sad, what happens to her husband.
Yeah.
And I don't know how long he's in this hospital, but he's there long enough to like, when they finally drive home, he's got a decent scar on his neck.
Yes.
No more bandages. And so they pull up to their house, and then you see that he's having like a flashback to him playing on the lawn with his son. And then you realize, oh my gosh, the son is actually dead. So now we have this very sad couple coming home to this sad house that still has like Christmas decorations up from like 4 months ago.
Yeah, Christmas presents under the tree.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's just really awful.
Yeah.
And this whole first act is basically them kind of cohabitating. You know, she says nothing to him. And this is the part where I was like, oh, this is not realistic.
You don't think? You don't think couples dealing with grief, sometimes there's just these pregnant pauses and sometimes maybe even days of silence? She knows that he's in the other room drinking.
Yes, of course that's realistic, but to not have any words for him?
Well, you know, this is the 21st century, so they talk in the best way there is to talk in this century. They text each other.
Yeah, she texts him and he ignores her.
And he just like, you know, how you doing? And he sends her, frowny face. How was your day? Picture of poop. This is how people talk now. I want a whole romantic comedy like this.
They just send each other emojis.
John Woo, if you're listening to this, that's what the sequel to Silent Night has to be. Just people talking through emojis.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, because she just sends him a text like, I can't find my keys. Have you seen them? No. Like, that's it. No is the only thing he ever writes back.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's very sad.
I know. He starts drinking. He's obviously torn up about what has happened because it's established that, this gang fight like drove through their neighborhood and their son got killed by a stray bullet.
Yeah. Yeah. Innocent bystander.
Yeah. And then that's when he starts running after them and then he gets shot in the neck. So just the whole thing just tears this family apart. I was like definitely into this part of the movie because I wasn't sure like how it was going to get to the like revenge part.
Yeah.
What about you?
It's a slow build. It really takes its time. And the movie even gives us a calendar to establish how long the process is because on the one hand, he's grieving, but he does have, and the character's name is Brian, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Joel Kinnaman. And Brian has like this, he kind of snaps out of it and realizes that he can take action here. So for one thing, he starts working out, which is cool. And he starts plotting revenge.
His wife moves out.
His wife moves out.
Yeah.
To a really nice apartment. It's like, man, what does she do?
I don't know, but she's the only one working, the only one making money.
I thought she was a nurse. So I'm wrong about that? I thought she was a nurse.
Yeah, she'd be wearing scrubs if she was a nurse. She's dressed in like office attire. So I don't know. Again, we don't know anything. Because
and this takes place in LA?
Yeah, I think
Maybe
so.
she works at Nakatomi Plaza.
She's like the new Takagi.
Oh, man. Well, it is the 21st century. It's like, yeah, we're not going to do male macho bosses. That's very 80s.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is like.
We got this woman who never says anything. She's really good.
Yeah. So like she leaves and then at some point, Brian, yeah, like you said, he snaps out of his
funk.
Depression and he starts plotting.
Yeah.
So he does end up going. There is a cop who leaves his business card at the hospital.
Yes.
And
he loosely becomes the third character in the film. Yeah.
Yeah. So he does go to the police station and, he's waiting for him, but the guy is running late. So Brian just starts taking pictures of all the gang members on the wall that are wanted.
I guess the implication here is that indeed, like he went to talk to a cop who gave him his card. And while he's in his office waiting, there's all these mugshots and info on the wall of all these criminals in town.
Yes.
And Brian looks and goes, hey, I know that guy. So he takes pictures on his phone and then ditches.
Yep.
I get, it's very convenient plotting, I must say.
Well, and what was Brian doing before this happened? Because he ends up having like a whole wall in his garage of all the mug shots. I mean, he's taking down, he's got maps. I don't even know what he's doing, but he's also YouTubing how to fight with knives. Yeah. He's going to the gun range. He buys a new car, learns how to drift. Mm-hmm. I mean, this guy's like...
Do you think he Googled? He's just like, okay, how can I become Vin Diesel?
Yeah, no, I think he did not Google how to become Vin Diesel. He must have Googled something else. His search history?
How to become Liam Neeson?
Yes.
Well,
He's like, I need a certain set of skills.
there you go. Was I told you the movie that this reminds me the most of is Death Wish. It's not Taken. It's certainly not John Wick. It's Death Wish because although it also that's an aspect of the movie that I have kind of mixed feelings about because the way Brian's son dies, and listeners, I'm talking about a movie here, so please don't jump on me about this. The way
Send your hate mail too.
this kid is a victim of circumstance, all right? This is not like Death Wish where the main character's wife and daughter are raped and murdered. So of course he's going to get some guns. Of course he's going to go on a killing spree. And of course you're going to root for this vigilantism. In this case, it's, again, like, oops, sorry, we were having a gang war. Your son, sorry about that, our bad. So... but it makes it like it's okay that he's going to go and murder all these people because a guy accidentally fired his gun in the wrong direction.
This is crazy what you're saying. Okay. Like he writes down on his calendar on December 24th, kill them all. Okay. He has gone through the most traumatic, like physical thing that he's probably ever been through in his life, like getting shot in the neck and then losing his voice. I mean, yeah, he's on disability now.
You think in the original draft of the script, it was like, okay, December 25th is correction day. But they're like, no, too subtle. Kill them all.
Yeah, kill them all. Like that.
Exclamation point.
That's better.
Underline.
And, I bet like they live in this neighborhood. I actually think they're in Texas.
Do you?
Yeah, I think that's what is established. I think they are in Texas. But, like, obviously there's, like, gang problems in their town.
Yeah.
And this is probably not the first time they've heard gunfire. So, of course he's going to go on, like, a vigilante killing spree.
Of course? That's a given?
Yeah. Otherwise, maybe we have no movie.
Maybe it's about how he becomes, a civil rights lawyer, or maybe he opens up a Dairy Queen, or there's a lot of different things he can do here.
He's ticked because this like cop who's like head of the gang war division has not arrested anybody, has not taken care of anything. Like he's really, really mad about that. So all the scenes that like they show with him and his son, it's clear they have like this really deep bond. So,
let's talk about the visual language here because that's what we're talking about, and the fact that they, that Wu made this movie. It's like they picked the right guy because people forget about this, but basically this movie has the same plot as Face Off. Do you remember how Face Off opens?
Yeah.
Remember on the merry-go-round?
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
You're right.
It's the same thing.
The son gets shot.
Exactly. Opening scene, same thing.
And it's a stray bullet.
Yes.
Oh.
But but let's also talk about this though. That film has a very complex villain, but there's a lot of business in terms of establishing how they've been chasing each other. It's a cat and mouse game. And in this movie, no one's saying anything. So yeah, there are these.
But Nicolas Cage goes to jail in Face Off, and
Right.
these guys just like get away to like go murder another day.
However, like all John Woo movies, the protagonist has to go through either an exterior or interior transformation to beat the bad guy.
Yes.
So it's just like every other John Woo film because John Woo's movies are about this. Even Paycheck, in a way, is about that very thing. So the problem, of course, is that you'd think, in theory, by removing all the dialogue from this film, the movie would move quicker. It doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
It almost is like an experiment where it's like, oh, okay, they're in a room together, they're sitting, they're not talking. There's information here that we're not getting, especially
Exactly.
the subplot with the subplot with the cop, is a problem because obviously the character is a walking exposition machine that we're not getting any.
Yeah.
It's kind of, like I defend, and I swear, like I'm going somewhere with this. I defend Terrence Malick's recent films that were set in contemporary days, To the Wonder, Night of Cups, Song to Song, even though Malick is one of these guys who loves to do a scene like, okay, like I'm going to have Ben Affleck and Olga Kurylenko do this long scene where they fight together. And let's do the same scene, except you're not going to have any dialogue and action. So you have these scenes of characters sitting in a room, like staring at each other. And I love it when he does that.
The difference, though, with that is he has a narrator, and like
we often hear their thoughts.
Yeah,
right.
you hear everything.
Yeah, in this case, like it's not a silent movie, But because the main characters aren't speaking, I think it works in terms of establishing the mood of the thing. But at the same time, it does feel like you're missing information.
Yeah.
It feels like it does feel like the story is half baked, and not everything comes together easily. There's questions you have just about basic things like why does he have this weapon, or like why is and because it's nice on the one hand. It's nice that there's no scenes of Joel Kinnaman going like, "I am vengeance" or whatever. Like just those those Liam Neeson,
cheesy
Charles
lines.
Bronson lines. Yeah. So like it eliminates that, but at the same time, we kind of we're.
But it also eliminates like the connection between characters.
Yes.
Like him and his wife. How long have they even been married? Like how long were they together?
Yeah.
I mean, is it possible that they could, go to therapy? Would they ever be able to have other kids?
Yeah, it's
there's so many things that this couple, if it was based in the real world, would try to explore, and you get none of that.
It's like a John Wick movie with all of the mythology sucked out of it. So like no talk about the high table, no talk about John Wick being the boogeyman of hitmen, none of that. It's just like we're taking everything at face value. And in a sense, again, like I would say it works because I think most people are going into this movie knowing who John Woo is, knowing, like having seen some kind of revenge or vengeance movie. If this is your first time seeing a film like this, I think if anything, you'll be like, man, like they're not saying much. A lot of killing, not a lot of talking.
Yeah. Well, and my other big complaint with movies like this is, kind of where the main character goes through a physical transformation and then all of a sudden he becomes this killing machine. And I do think the film establishes something pretty realistic because I think it takes him about 8-9 months to get ready for his night of revenge.
Yeah.
And since we don't know what his background is, although it kind of is pretty clear that he's never shot a gun before. He's never drifted before. He's never done knife fighting before. But we don't know what else he's done in his past that would give him any kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, there's no subtext. There's no background.
Physical advantage.
Yeah. Because on the one hand, and I say this a lot with movies like this, like it's just a movie. Who cares? Just go with it. These are like classic themes, okay? But on the other hand, it's morally dubious.
Yeah.
Because we're just seeing this guy train himself to murder people that we don't know very well. And we're seeing a guy we don't know very well who's basically just a walking murderer. He's going to, I guess it's a Mexican drug gang, I guess. But because none of them have any dialogue, we're basically just watching actors playing stereotypical bad guys. So,
well, but it is established that there's 2 different gangs. And so on the calendar, Brian writes, "Gang war?" ? So he's like, how am I going to get this started? Maybe I'll just make them think that the other one started it and get them fighting each other. And then I'll come in and just start shooting whoever gets in my way.
I guess for people who are burnt out by John Wick movies, and I'm not, by the way, the 2nd and 4th John Wick films, I love those movies. The even numbered John Wicks were awesome. But I do wonder if, for some people, if this is going to play like a self-parody or if it's going to play like the real thing, or both. If it's a Starship Troopers thing where it has its cake and eats it too. I don't know. I just know as a John Woo fan, I just found the action to always be exciting. Mm-hmm. The use of slow motion. Again, the themes are there. That was what was exciting for me. It's like, yeah, like A Better Tomorrow and The Killer and Hard Boiled. Like it's in line with those movies. And, he's using a bird to symbolize purity. In this case, it's a CGI bird. It's not a dove. The fans would be happy to know.
It's a very cute bird.
It's a very cute CGI bird in one scene. The slow motion is poetic as always. I always feel like the way Woo slows down time so that there's clarity to the action, the choreography, and the geography, it's just brilliant. Always brilliant. I love his movies. And, again, like when it's good versus evil, it always feels mythic. It always feels like the greatest person in the world versus the most awful person in the world in this battle that's going to make the earth quake.
All right. So right before we get to the 3rd act, which is our Day of Revenge, he writes all these letters, or he writes something, and then he takes a present to his son's gravesite.
Mhm.
It's just like, it's so sad. He sets up a train set around his tombstone.
That's just goofy. And I got to say, that's one thing I love about John Woo. His movies could be goofy, even quirky. Like there's the Killer and Hard Boiled have these touches in them. Like that's kind of cartoonish or silly.
Okay, but Brian's basically out of his mind. Like he's so singularly
I miss
focused.
you, son. I know you love this train set, so I'm going to put a train set around your tombstone.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's sad because he, because I asked you, I said, do you think he's going into this knowing he could probably die?
Yeah,
And
definitely.
you're like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a suicide mission.
Yeah.
Like he's trained for 9 months to be the best he could possibly be. And then whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
So it's Christmas Eve. And
That's why this is a Christmas film.
yes, a nice wholesome Christmas movie.
Yeah, if you're going to watch, don't worry about Die Hard. Watch this, The Long Kiss Goodnight, and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. That's a great action Christmas night.
Wow, babe. No, they're all great movies. I wouldn't watch them on Christmas though. Maybe like leading up.
One day our daughter's going to be like in college and totally hip and cynical and stuff. And, she's going to be, oh, I guess I'll hang out with you for Christmas. What are we watching? And I'm going to like hit her up with this. So I'm like, yes, Dad. Awesome. That's the dream.
Wow. Okay. Now I know what I get to look forward to. All right. Well, Brian does start a gang war.
Mm-hmm.
And now, the third act of this movie is just him
killing a lot of people very well.
Yeah, a lot of people.
He does get shot. He does get kicked and hit quite a few times.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of good chase. Good chase scenes in like the car.
The car chase scenes are great in this. Yeah. That's the thing. Bottom line, this movie is an exercise. It's an exercise in style. It's an exercise in action movie filmmaking. And again, I would say it's a device. You would say it's a gimmick.
I say it's a gimmick.
Okay.
Because you don't have to do it.
That is correct.
There are
But it's nice to not hear cliched, stupid, stereotypical formula action movie dialogue, which can be really clumsy.
I don't want that. I want like real people talking. We could have had that, and we didn't.
But everything about this situation is so elevated. I don't know how realistic this movie would seem, even in the anguish. And by the way, maybe the first act, with all of its grief and sadness, maybe it would be emotionally unbearable. Maybe it would be too much for this movie if we could actually hear them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was fine with them in the hospital scenes not talking.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That kind of made sense. There's like nurses and doctors around, and they're showing him trying to walk again, that kind of thing. But yeah, once they were back in their house, it just didn't feel authentic.
But it also saves us from, I never got to teach him how to play baseball. I never got to see him in Little League. Like, we don't have those scenes.
I don't think he would have done that.
We don't need, we don't get like a drunken monologue.
He wouldn't have been talking because he's injured. It would have been been her talking.
Fine, but maybe we'll do the other thing. Like maybe the whole thing is text messages. Maybe it's whatever sign language. They probably could have found a way to justify the communication, but instead, this is the other extreme. It's like, no, we're sticking to this idea.
Yeah, and I don't like that when it comes to like her interactions with him. I don't think she's authentic in not saying a word.
All right. Well, my way of defending your side of it, and to a degree, I do agree with this, is just that the movie isn't faster without dialogue. It still feels like why aren't you guys saying something?
Yeah,
a lot. It does feel like that a lot. Like, okay, like they stuck to this, they're sticking to their guns, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, this film doesn't move along as quickly as you would hope for a film where no one's talking.
Can we jump kind of to the final? Fight scene because.
We have a clip. Here it is. And that's the clip.
It's kind of exciting in the sense that Brian, he sets up a booby trap and then he's going to go after the head of this gang.
Yeah, he home alones some of the bad guys. It's great. Yeah.
But the guy with the crazy face tattoo, he's in like, I don't know, the top floor of this building, and it's like decorated for Christmas with
giant Christmas balls. Yeah. He's wearing a Santa
hat and like robe.
Yeah.
And he So his girlfriend or wife or whatever is there. And it looks like she's just like passed out on this bed. And he then I think he just shoots her up with heroin because she's got some gnarly scars on her arms.
Maybe she's diabetic. That's really insensitive, Rose. How dare you assume that especially since she doesn't tell us.
Yeah. She's like...
Insulin shots, right?
Yeah, okay. No, sure. I'm sure it's insulin. All of a sudden, she's awake and smiling, and they're waltzing to whatever music.
They're a classy couple. They only murder in the weekends.
The music is so loud, they're not hearing the machine gun fire, which is crazy. That just doesn't.
Yeah,
that doesn't hold up. But yeah, this whole thing is nuts. Just the whole scenario.
Sure. Yeah.
And then we have our cop guy who does show up because Brian does drop off all of his research and everything that he's put together. And the note on it is what you should have done.
Yeah.
Basically you suck at your job and I would be a better cop than you. That's what Brian's telling him.
Let me ask you really quick though. What does Brian do?
No, I don't. Again, I already asked that question.
Well, I want to.
We don't know.
Because my big question, because that opening scene is wonderful. But as you pointed out, he does stop a car with a metal pole at one point.
Yeah.
Most mere mortals can't do that.
Yeah, I know. He's a big guy, but then it's established when he decides to start working out, he can barely do a pull-up.
Yeah.
So,
but it made me think, was he a former cop? Was he a part of this gang?
No, I don't think so.
What is his angle? Because
I don't think so. I think he's maybe he was a car mechanic because he seems pretty good with cars.
Yeah, but at the same time, stopping a car at full speed with a metal pole, that's some Dwayne Johnson stuff.
I know. I think that that was the adrenaline of that day. Yeah, I don't think
it was the Christmas sweater that did it. It just boosts your confidence. I know exactly how he felt. Okay, so the final scene.
Yeah, the final scene. So, he Home Alone some bad guys and they get blown up, and then the girl.
She's machine guns blazing.
Heroin chic girl.
Yeah.
She comes after Brian, and this is when Brian just looks at her and I was like, no, Brian, no, just because she's a girl, you're not gonna, he doesn't do it. And then she shoots him and injures him, mortally, actually.
Yeah. Although he gets shot mortally a lot.
Yeah. He is wearing protective gear, but still, he does take her out eventually. I'm like, don't have mercy on her just because she's a girl. There are some scenes in the earlier part of the movie where she's horrible and I think she pours a slushie on him.
Oh yeah, that's right. That is her, isn't it?
I think that's her. In a parking lot. She just...
It was a hot day. He was thirsty. You always assume the worst about her. You think she's doing heroin.
She's a mean girl, babe. She's a very mean girl. Yeah. And then he does have a final fight with the head of this
main
gang.
Guy, yep.
Yeah. And
what do they talk about? Nothing.
They don't say anything to each other, which is crazy. We know why Brian's not talking, but the fact that nobody else is, it doesn't make any sense. Because even when the cop shows up to help him, it's they just stare at each other.
It's the language of cinema telling the story. And in some cases, leaving out some pivotal information that would have been helpful for us to understand the story, but still.
Just sending each other good vibes? What are they doing?
It's LA, of course.
So, yeah, and then that's it for our main character.
Well, he dies.
He does.
He dies, and before he dies, a goofy, sentimental John Woo touch. I'm like, oh, of course, it's here. He's looking at the giant Christmas balls and having images of his son.
Yes. I was thinking ooh, that feels really cheesy. But
it's very cheesy.
But also, the thing that I will say to defend it is that, he's basically losing all of his blood and probably hallucinating. So, I guess there is some reality that could go into that,
These are my final visions. really corny, but I miss my son.
Yeah. And then the final scene is his wife goes to the gravestone and there's the letters there for her. And then you just like read what he wrote. So you finally get to like hear or see like his inner thoughts. But again, I just don't feel like it's enough.
Do you think she has to take the train station down every time she visits that tombstone?
Yeah, like the people at the cemetery are like, "I'm sorry, look, lady, we
it's that
gotta
weird train
mow.
lady.
We have to mow the lawn. You can't just leave this up."
Can't stand that lady. She like sets up this train and watches it go around and around and around and around.
That's so sad.
And then she has to like put the train back in the box. Ugh. And it leaves a little like circle around. It's like a little crop circle around it. We gotta like mow the lawn. Always leaves a weird shape. Can't stand that lady.
Oh.
She doesn't say much.
Aww. That's so sad.
It's pathetic. I heard her husband didn't say much either. Weird couple.
Wow.
All they did was stare at that train set.
Yeah, they just...
Why don't they have any kids?
Oh.
I asked her and she wouldn't tell me. They're really quiet.
I know. Well, the tombstone says, "Mommy and Daddy love you and miss you."
It's very on the nose.
Yeah, it is. That's the end. And
You know what? No sequel.
Yeah, definitely.
No sequel. Yeah, it's standalone.
Because Brian is
It is
gone.
over. And you know what? Look, he should be punished for being a vigilante. He should be punished for months and months and months of becoming a stone cold killer and watching YouTube videos how to stab people in the face. Absolutely.
Yeah, and there is no reason for like one man to go up against like two different gangs and survive.
Yeah.
I mean, that's Sylvester Stallone territory.
Yes.
Yeah, and John Kinnaman is no
Joel
Sly.
Kinnaman.
Oh, sorry.
He's no Sly, but you know, famously, Arnold Schwarzenegger almost made a version of I Am Legend where he had no dialogue for I think the first hour of the movie. That movie, it was going to be Ridley Scott directed. I'm sure I've talked about it on this podcast before. The film did not get made, but the script was brilliant, and it found a way to kind of keep Arnold from spouting out one-liners and just give a performance. And he was down. They canceled the movie because it was too expensive. I love that idea. I still do. And Stallone, as much as he can be a wordsmith, I mean, I think his screenplay, for example, Rocky Balboa, is fantastic, and I love his big monologue in Creed. Like Stallone, it can be really great with words and use words well. My favorite Stallone performance is Copland, and he's got soulful scenes in that film where he doesn't emote with anything but his face. So I like this idea. I do. I don't think, I mean, fine. If it's a gimmick, I agree with you. It's got problems. It's somewhat half-baked. And, you know, if we're just doing, you know, the wages of sin is death, which is a theme that appears in a lot of Wu films, then fine. I think it works well. Yeah, I like this film. I agree with you. It's not airtight at all, but I think I think it's more than worthy.
Are you ever going to watch this again?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, it's a cool action movie. And you know what? Like I told you the other day, we just watched David Fincher's The Killer, which is on Netflix. And it was highly touted. It's from Andrew Kevin Walker, the author of Seven. It's got Michael Fassbender, his first movie in years. I like that film. I enjoyed that movie, but that movie is a wimp fest compared to this.
Well,
The Killer is like a Disney film compared to this. No, seriously, like, and Fincher's a movie god. He is. He's a fantastic director. Zodiac's one of my favorite movies. But this is nastier, grosser, more. I mean, it's like this is a real pulpy.
Yeah, the action is great.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that. It's just the story doesn't really add up for me. And I was telling you, I think, you know, when directors try and do these gimmicks where they're like, I'm going to make it look like my movie has no edits at all.
Sure.
Or,
Yeah.
you know, I use the example of Memento, which I know a lot of people love. But
Why don't you love Memento? It's great.
no, but I'm just
Tells the
saying,
whole thing backwards.
I know. It's a gimmick, though. Like, you don't have to do that.
Yeah, but Nolan does it all the time. He often tells stories where we're missing things. Tenet, you know, there's no beginning or end. It's just everything is in the middle, and we're trying to figure out what the beginning and the Prestige. There's all this information that's missing. We just have the imagery of the hats. It doesn't all come together to the end. So, like, Nolan's constantly telling puzzle stories. Even Oppenheimer, not so much, but like even like Dark Knight Rises, the idea of like who is in that pit. Who's in, you know, like Bruce Wayne has to climb out of the pit, but who's in there with him? We ultimately learn about how Bane and someone else is in there with him. So, in Interstellar, another one. Just this idea of it being kind of a puzzle, and in this case, it's like it's not even that. It's just this question of like, how can you make a silent film in contemporary days? And this is like, well, this is it.
Mm-hmm.
This is how, like, if you had a hardcore R-rated action movie starring Charlie Chaplin, this is what it would look like. If Harold Lloyd and Buster Keaton could be in Face Off together, it would look like this.
Wow, I do not actually want to see that.
You don't want to see Charlie Chaplin in like Face Off? Harold Lloyd in Hard Target? I don't know.
No.
Kind of like that idea.
Okay, well, It feels gimmicky to me in this instance, just because I think there could have been some very moving dialogue, things that really like pulled at your heartstrings and made me like care about Brian a little bit more, because I kind of knew, I'm like, he's gonna die at the end.
Sure, but I think that's the way it should be, though. I don't think you should reward him for spending a year learning how to murder 40 gangbangers.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, what's another movie that has a gimmick?
Gimmick?
That you think works or doesn't work?
Well, Mel Brooks made a silent movie called Silent Movie, and it was a comedy, and it was, but at the same time there were subtitles, and it made fun of, and they actually had an actor, I won't say which one, they actually have an actor who has dialogue in the movie. I mean, there's all these films, like there's a movie called Russian Ark where the whole thing was done in one take, and then that's a real deal thing where the camera like goes to this museum, the museum comes to life. Hitchcock did Rope, and Rope is only filmed in just a couple of takes. I think it's like 10 or 11 takes, something like that. The idea is that it immerses you further into the story by relying on less of the language of film. And in this case, you eliminate so much of the dialogue or all of the dialogue. And I feel it helps that we're dealing with one of the great visualists.
Yeah.
I think it works
I mean, the visuals are awesome. Yeah. But like,
But I mean, let's face it, it's a basic story.
It is.
And I think that helps. It's certainly less complicated than something like The Killer or, even some of John Woo's other films. Mm-hmm. I would rank it above Broken Arrow. I'm not a Broken Arrow fan, even. That's a fun movie.
Okay, well, how many stars are you giving
3.
this? You give it 3?
Yeah, I give it 3.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, his masterpiece is Hard Boiled, but I'd say number 2 is Hard Target, which I know a lot of people are on the fence about, but I love Hard Target. That's my favorite of his American films.
I'm giving this 2 stars.
2 stars?
Yeah.
Okay.
2 for the action. Like you said, I mean, amazing. All the stunts and everything.
Yeah. Although I got to say, I saw the John Wick Chapter 4 this year, and it's not that good. It's not as good as John Wick Chapter 4. I've never seen
any John Wicks.
Really?
Yeah.
Why not?
I don't know. I need to see them.
You need to see less Lifetime.
I'm not watching Lifetime. I'm watching Netflix rom-coms.
I stand corrected. You need to watch less of those movies and more John Wick.
Okay. Yeah, I that's probably true. All right, so 3 stars for you.
Okay, yeah, 3 stars. Okay, I really like this movie.
Would you change anything about it? You're like, dialogue. I mean, I would change that about it. I think it would make it better, but that's just me.
I want to see this movie where there's no dialogue and no one takes off their sunglasses ever. Yeah, because that's cool.
You did also say there's not a lot of music.
Yeah, no. Even though Marco Beltrami does a really good score, and you hear it over the end credits. But yeah, it's really, as you noted, there's a tour de force sound effects. The sound editing on this thing is fantastic.
I do think it could win an Oscar for sound editing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Which would be really ironic for a movie called Silent Night.
I know. But yeah, and there is like, the only music really is like radio, like ambient sounds, and then there is, he has this like little music box thing. Right.
That reminds him of his son that he's constantly, and that's a pull from other John Woo movies. Other John Woo movies, particularly Face Off, again, have done that technique.
Did he lose a child? Like, is that why he's...
John Woo?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know a lot about his personal life. I just know about his body of work.
Yeah. Because it does seem, I mean, it is probably, I'd say, the most traumatic thing that could happen to a parent. So it is I guess in that way, a good narrative device.
Yeah, of course.
For revenge, especially if it happens in a way like this movie shows. So
Well, in the spirit of this movie, I'm sure if you asked John Woo that question, I'm sure he would say,
like, thank you for your quote.
well, if I'm going to quote the greats, I want to make sure I get it right. So.
Yeah.
So you're never watching this again. That's what you're telling me. Never?
I don't think so.
You're going to catch me watching this by myself. Like, oh, that stupid movie with no dialogue. Stupid Silent Night. No, but you know what? I got to agree with him. One thing. A Quiet Place, I think, is a masterpiece.
Yeah.
I love A Quiet Place. And I think it actually, even though there is some dialogue in the movie, I think it does this better.
I agree.
Yeah.
But
this is still great. And if you love John Woo, see it. It's great. See it in the theater. See it on a big screen. It's worth it.
Now that we've ruined it for you, go see it.
We didn't ruin it. I didn't tell you the best line in the movie, which is, see? You didn't see that coming, did you?
All right. Well, I think that concludes our discussion of John Woo's Silent Night.